The Cheyenne tribes of Native American Indians were amongst what is now considered the most well-known of plain Indian tribes today. Often allying with the Sioux and Arapaho, the Cheyenne tribe originally lived in stationary villages in the eastern parts of the country and occupied much of what is now Minnesota until they migrated to the high plains in the early 1800s. The Cheyenne Indians were split into two tribes, in which the northern Cheyenne tribe lived in Montana, and the southern Cheyenne Indians shared a tribe with their allies, the southern Arapaho, in Oklahoma. By the time the Americans met the Cheyenne Indians, they were living on the Great Plains in what is now considered South Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, Colorado, Minnesota, and Kansas. During the 17th century, a group of Cheyenne came to visit LaSalle's Fort in Illinois, which this was the first time Europeans came into contact with members of the Cheyenne tribe. The Cheyenne Indians were classified as part of the Great Plains culture area, also known as Plain Indians, because of their nomadic lifestyle, their use of horses, their buffalo hunting, and their use of teepees for shelter. The Cheyenne Nation formed into 10 bands, which spread across the Great Plains, from southern Colorado to the Black Hills in South Dakota. The Cheyenne Indians had a council of 44, which consisted of 40 headsmen, 4 from each of the 10 bands, and 4 councilmen known as Old Man Chiefs. The Cheyenne Indians of Montana and Oklahoma spoke the Cheyenne language. The Cheyenne language consisted of an alphabet of 14 letters and had many complicated verbs with many parts. Over the past 400 years, the Cheyenne Indians have gone through 4 stages of culture. First, they lived in the eastern woodlands and were farmers, planting crops like corn, squash, beans, and they harvested wild rice. Next, they lived in present-day Minnesota and South Dakota and continued their farming tradition. They eventually started hunting bison of the Great Plains. During the third stage, the Cheyenne Indians abandoned their farming lifestyle and became a complete plains horse culture tribe. The fourth stage, however, was the reservation phase. Cheyenne women were known for their creativity in decorating objects with horsehair, feathers, and the bones and skin of animals. Traditional crafts included beadwork, pipestone carving, and pottery. Cheyenne men hunted game to provide the camp with food. The older men made bows, arrows, and pipes, while the younger men spent time enhancing their personal appearance and or listening to the older men for advice for the future. Examples of resistance to change. Number 1. Beginning in the 1860s, the federal government's policy was to try and establish small areas of land for specific tribes and encourage them to take up farming. While many tribes did settle peacefully on such reservations, others resisted up giving their lands and way of life, such as the Cheyenne Indians. Number 2. The Cheyenne Indians also battled the U.S. Army for control of the West. The Cheyenne Indian tribe engaged in constant battle with non-Indians and attacked troop installments throughout the late 1860s and 70s. Number 3. Also, many Cheyenne dog soldiers, which were the military elite of the Cheyenne Nation, refused to sign treaties that limited their hunting grounds and restricted them to reservations south of the Arkansas River. The constant fighting between Americans and the Cheyenne Indians was all because the Americans promised Cheyenne land, but kept taking more and more land from them. The Americans let the native people starve to death by killing all of their food sources, like the buffalo, and used them just for their fur. As a result, the only way to prevent all of this from occurring was to stand up and to fight, in which the Cheyenne Indians did. Time and environment. The earliest known historical record of the Cheyenne Indians comes from the mid-17th century, when a group of Cheyenne visited the French fort near present-day Chicago, Illinois. The Cheyenne at this time lived between the Mississippi River and Millis Lake in present-day Minnesota. In the 1700s, the Cheyenne tribe moved northwest to the Cheyenne River in North Dakota and continued to grow corn, bean, and squash. In the 1750s, the Cheyenne Indians acquired horses, which just allowed them to travel farther distances and hunt buffalo. In the 1780s, the Cheyenne Indians moved to the game lands of the Black Hills. Here they allied with the Arapaho. This, however, marked the beginning of life on the Great Plains. In 1806, Lewis and Clark met with the Cheyenne leader in an attempt to get a grasp on the weak alliances they sought between the Plain tribes. In 1825, a friendship treaty was made. This treaty was a pledge of peace between the Cheyenne and the United States. In 1830, the Cheyenne tribe had split into two bands, the Northern and Southern Cheyenne tribe. In 1851, the first treaty at Fort Laramie was made. Cheyenne and Arapaho territory was fully established, covering lands in Wyoming, Nebraska, Colorado, and Kansas. During 1864, the Sand Creek Massacre occurred, which this massacre occurred because the Cheyenne Indians destroyed white settlers' property. 1865, Cheyenne Indians established a new reservation spanning the borders of Kansas and Oklahoma. During the year of 1890, the Cheyenne Indians had their last engagement with the U.S. Army. During 1936, the Northern Cheyenne approved a tribal constitution under the Indian Reorganization Act. During the year of 2000, President Clinton signed the Sand Creek National Historic Site Establishment Act, setting aside 12,000 acres in Colorado. Today, there are about 16,000 Cheyenne Indians living. Because the Cheyenne Indians weren't coastal people, when they traveled by river, they usually built their own rafts. Originally, the Cheyenne Indians would use dogs to pull their sleds to help them carry their belongings. However, once Europeans introduced horses to North America, the Cheyennes could travel quicker and further and began to migrate frequently to follow the buffalo herds. The majority of the Cheyenne women were in charge of their home. Besides cooking and cleaning, a Cheyenne woman built her family's house and dragged the heavy posts with her whenever the tribe moved. Men, on the other hand, were hunters and warriors, responsible for feeding and defending their families. However, only men became Cheyenne chiefs. There were a lot of traditional Cheyenne legends and fairy tales that many Cheyenne Indians told to their children. Storytelling was very important to the Cheyenne Indian culture, as well as their dancing ceremonies like the sun dance and the ghost dance. The sun dance was a religious ceremony of the Plain Indians and was held every summer. This dance showed a connection between life and death to the Cheyenne Indians. The ghost dance, on the other hand, was a religious dance of Native Americans looking for communication with the dead, past and present. One very important person to the Cheyenne Indians was their leader named Dual Knife. He was the chief of hand of the Northern Cheyenne Indians who first came into public notice in 1868. He acquired the name Dual Knife in battle with a Lakota warrior, which his knife could not pierce the opponent's tough buffalo hide shield. Dual Knife is also known for signing the Treaty of 1868, which this treaty was one of the last great treaties signed between the American government and the Plain Indians. Another event that had an impact on the Cheyenne Indians was the Sand Creek Massacre. This massacre was a surprise attack by U.S. troops on a Cheyenne camp. A force of 1,200 men attacked several hundred Cheyenne Indians camped on Sand Creek in Colorado Territory. The Indians had been conducting peace negotiations with the fort's commander when the attack began. Although the Cheyenne Indians raised a right flag, indicating peace, the U.S. troops continued to attack, massacring more than 200 of them. These slayings, however, led to the Plain Indian Wars. Today, the Cheyenne Indians occupy two reservations, one at Tongue River, Montana, where some 6,500 people live, and the other reservation in southern west Oklahoma, which is shared with their longtime allies, the Arapaho, and consists of about 11,000 members. Today, Cheyenne Indians only put up a teepee for fun or to connect with their heritage, not for shelter. In a matter of fact, most Cheyennes live in modern houses and apartment buildings, just like us. And today, some Cheyenne people still wear beaded dresses, but the majority of them wear regular clothes and also speak English, just like us.